Hello and welcome to Noni, Yanga's flagship talk show, where we discuss the topics that you, our viewers at home, are talking about just that little bit louder. I'm Bisi and today we'll be discussing a topic I covered last series, but this time from the perspective of a male. So who are my guests? Well, joining me today are artist Ayo, podcaster and thought leader Shaun Flores, and presenter, host and DJ Samuel Eni. Welcome guys, how are you doing?
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
How are you feeling? You feeling good?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another day.
How are you feeling?
To be honest, yeah, I'm feeling pretty alright. And like it's sunny. The weather has been dead before, but now it's sunny, so I feel really, really good.
Good.
So last series, I spoke about what it meant to grow up as a daughter without a father. One report claims staggering statistics such as 71% of pregnant teenagers come from fatherless homes, and 92% of girls raised in fatherless homes later suffer divorce. But that was only one side of the coin. This time out, I want to know what it is like to be growing up as a son without their dad. How is a young man shaped if they are raised without a father in their lives, especially in those crucial formative years of adolescence? So guys, what are your experiences? I will start with Samuel.
I think my dad left the house around when I was 3, so I was very, very young. So I didn't really have a father figure until I actually, or saw a father figure, until I actually went to my cousins. So me and my family are quite close, tight-knit. So back in the days when I was growing up, in my adolescent years, I would always go over to my cousin's house because they had more of a structure, family basis. My mum was always working. So I'd kind of spend my childhood with my cousin, who was, again, a single son as well. As I was a single son, my sister wasn't in the picture then times. And it was just me and him, and it's like we were brothers rather than cousins. But he had the full setup. Mum, dad was there in the household. So I knew what it was like to a certain extent through an extended source of what it's like to have a man at the house. But when I went home, it was just my mum. And my mum did her best. She did her best. She raised a fine, handsome young man who has his head on his shoulders. You just got to be honest. And but I'm thankful for the relationship. I feel like the relationship was very important because it's not like she was a distant mother. She didn't really leave much. She would always be like, what's going on through your mind? Talk to me. Yeah. And I kind of built that relationship, and I feel like that's more important because especially those years, growing up in London, you can get up to all sorts of mischiefs.
All sorts of things, right?
All sorts of mischiefs.
And Shaun, what about you? What's your experience?
So my dad died when I was 6 years old on Christmas Day. He was present, always together. My mum and my dad were together. But I grew up with a very matriarchal unit. So my aunties all took care of me. They promised to look after me. And I never really questioned what it was like growing up with our dad, per se. I went to school, everything was normal. I just never really questioned it until people would ask, where's my dad? And so on, and be like, oh, he died. Or until you get older, you don't really question certain things. But as I look back now in retrospective, I understand having a male role model would have been good. But when I used to go back to Trinidad every single year, twice a year, my male role model was my mother's brother, so my uncle, and he taught me certain skills and taught me other things. So my mum's now moved on, so my stepdad, unfortunately, he's not well, he's in a home, unfortunately. So my mum's probably gonna lose 2 partners, but he was like a father figure for me growing up. So he came into my life around 17, but I'm really thankful that my mother didn't put other men in my life because I think that would have confused me and thrown my brain off. So when he came into my life, I was setting my personality, setting the ideas with where I wanted to be. He just added to helping make me a better person in so many senses. So for me, my experience in some senses is positive, has its negatives, but I do understand the value of having a good man in a boy's life. And it's always the saying that a son, a father says to a son, be careful where you walk. And the son says to him, well, be careful where you walk, because I walk in your shadows. It's that idea. And if a boy has no shadows to walk in, he has to build his own sun. He's got to figure it out for himself, and that comes with trial and error. So, yeah, that's my story.
That's so deep. And Ayo, what about you?
My experience is similar to Samuel's experience, where my father left when I was 2. Within that year, my stepfather came in. So it was an experience where I did have a father figure for a few years, but then, like most people, he decided to go to Nigeria. So he was absent for a long time. So he'd come back and forth from Nigeria, but it was still predominantly my mother that was the sole parent in the household. She did a great job as she could. She did everything that she could in terms of me. I'm the first of 5, so I've got 1 sister and 3 brothers. Being a single mother for 5 kids, man, I just give her all the props in terms of that. So for me, my experiences has been of the fact that I've never really had a male figure present fully for the whole of my life. And that's how it is, and that's how it's been. So similar to what Shaun said, I'm just having to figure out who I want to be as a father, being a new father now, having to create my own sort of precedents and where and what I need to do in terms of being a great father falls on literally discovering it as we go.
Yeah, and I feel like what's really key about what you all have said is that, despite the absence of your father, you all made reference to how great of a job your mothers did and how you value that so much and how you're so grateful for that. And as a woman growing up in a fatherless home, I'm like, my mom is like the ultimate G because she played the mum role and the dad role. And there were many times where I didn't really have to realize that my dad wasn't there because she really went above and beyond to provide for me, to care for me, to look after me as a mother does. But I wanted to know what it was like for you. Was there a particular moment when you realized, my dad isn't here, like I needed him for this and he's not there? Did that ever happen for you? And if it did, what was it? Because I remember for me, when I realized, it would have been great if my dad was here at this moment in time, was when I first started dating, right? Okay. And when I just didn't know how to behave with guys. Like I would get really excited when they were like trying and give me attention because I had never experienced such attention from a male in a non-exploitive way. So when it came to me all throughout, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is nice. He thinks I'm beautiful, this is that. And then when that went wrong, I realized that if I had been shown so much love and affection from a male figure, then I wouldn't have been so drawn to it or latched onto it the way that I did. So that's when it was a key moment. I was like, if I had my dad, I wouldn't have gone down this road. But for you guys, was there any time in your life where you was just like, if I had my dad, I wouldn't have done this, or I realized, no, I needed my dad?
I think there was a few moments for me. I think one key moment that really stood out is that I know a lot of people, especially in the African community, we say we went university for our mothers. And that's a true statement, it is. I definitely did that for mine. But I always thought, like, if my dad was here, how proud would he be in that moment to see the first in his family, graduate and, achieve something of a standard of what they perceived as something to be quite credible. Because that's something that they drill in you from young. You must go to university, you must study, this, that, and the third. Do you know what I mean? But that's something that they drill in from young. So that moment, and I guess money, being able to secure finances in a reasonable manner, the thought of not feeling so much pressure of being the leader of the household from like 14. So understanding that you can't ask your mum for money anymore because she has to worry about other things to put food on the table. Then going out into the world and actually, again, like Shaun mentioned, figuring things out, a lot of trial and errors to kind of put yourself in a place where you're comfortable making this money and it's not really going to bring trouble home to your house. So yeah.
Did you have any moments?
I'd say 2 key moments, similar to yours. Puberty stage where you finally get the first girlfriend. Thankfully enough, luckily, my stepdad was around at that time. So we had a man-to-man talk. Like on my days, you finally got your first girlfriend now, just the way to treat her, and he gave me a few key points. But the one that was really daunting to me was, I think, the first time that I experienced a flat tire. Now, it still makes me kind of emotional just talking about it now. So it was me and my girlfriend. Obviously, ladies don't know how to change flat tires.
Yeah, I don't. I was thinking about it the other day, like I need to learn just in case,
It was me and her. She has a car, but she don't know how to do it. And she was like, if that ever happened to me, I don't know how I'd change it. But it was outside her house. I remember that day, and it was cold. It was a winter day. And
it's always on a cold winter day, isn't it?
Always on a cold winter day.
Never summer.
In the summer.
Never in summer.
It's cold. So I remember my hands were freezing. So I got out that wrench thing that you used to take it out. But I was using it for some reason, nothing occurred to me to like check YouTube. I don't know why, but I was in that moment using it, and I realized it was going up. The car was going up to like lift the car up, obviously. It was going up, but it was going up really slow. So I'm obviously using it in the wrong way. But something happened, I don't know, it just miraculously happened where the thing just switched up and it moved the car real quickly. And at that moment in time, bearing in mind I was there for about an hour and a half trying to move the car up, get it to lift. And it was lifting slowly for about a whole hour. But at one point, I don't know what happened, it just went shoom, and it just started going up. But in that moment in time, I just thought to myself, I've been there for an hour and a half in the cold trying to get this car up. If my dad was here, I'm sure he would have taught me, yo, bro, this is the way to do it. Like, this is how to change a car. And it was just one of those moments where I just thought, rah, that's a gap that's not been filled there. And you're 30 minutes away from me, but you haven't bothered to check me for 17 years. So that for me was like...
Yo, even when you said you're 30 minutes away and you haven't bothered to check for me.
But that's a whole other story. 17 years.
Wow. Sean?
My moment was when I graduated from my master's. So I gave a speech at my master's, and then when I came out, my 3 aunties were there and my mum. I just broke down and started crying because I was like, I miss my dad. I was like, I wish I had my dad around. I wish my dad was here. He was so proud of me. That was just a moment for me where I was like, damn, my dad could have been here. He should have been here. And whilst my mum did a fantastic job and, you know, women get the credit that they deserve, they do play the role of a mother and a father, but there's only so long you can supplement that role. And I think very interesting to the ideas of pre-colonial Africa, that it comes at a point in most boys' lives where they have to transition into manhood. And the boys start to spend more time with the fathers. They spend a lot more time away from the mothers. It's like they were weaning them off. And a lot of us probably never had that. We were weaned with our mothers. We were constantly with them. There's times when a boy goes off and he's weaned off his mother and he comes into his father and he becomes his own man, and his dad just shapes him and navigates him on that road. So that for me was that moment, and it just made me realize a lot of things about my own life and about who I wanted to be. And even just when I was younger, I used to play fight with some of my uncles, and women don't really do that.
At all.
You know, they don't get on their hands and knees. It's not something that you see often. But I think I'm quite lucky. My mother wasn't pretentious. She didn't really wear makeup, didn't really do the nails thing. But I wish she would be able to do that. And again, there's psychological tests that show that male rats that interact with for example, their little children, I forget what you call it, baby mice, rats or whatever you call them, they actually learn boundaries from play fighting. Small things like that, fathers would be able to do, so yeah.
No, that's beautiful, and I feel like I've learned a lot because I've never looked at it from this perspective. But obviously I'm a female, I've only known it from my personal experience. So thank you for sharing, guys. Like, it's really insightful. But we do need to take a short break. But when we come back, I want to ask my panel what they think specifically about men growing up without a father in the Black community. So see you after the break. Welcome back to Noni with me, Bisi Atkins, and my guests A30 Shaun Flores and Samuel Eni. So before the break, we were discussing personal experiences of my panel and what they've experienced on a personal level. And before I move on to what it's like to look at the community as a whole, I want to touch on something with you, A30. You spoke about your fatherlessness, but now that you've transitioned into fatherhood, what is that like, going from someone that didn't have their father to now being somebody's father?
Well, it's a blessing, obviously, having this beautiful child. She's going to be 9 months on Sunday, so she's still quite young. At first, it was obviously, you're overwhelmed with joy, happiness, but a child reaches a stage where they're more conscious. So like at first 3 months, I feel like all she did back then was just sleep, wake up, sleep. Interaction, in terms of interaction, it was quite minimal. So it was just literally that, sleep, wake up. But once she started hitting about 6 months is when I started having this emptiness in me, in terms of like, it dawned upon me that I know the sort of love that a mother has for a child, and I know how that love is and what to expect with that love. And in terms of interaction, I know she'd be very like excited to see her mum and whatnot, but I thought to myself, what am I doing? What am I not doing at that moment in time? Like, there's a void. How am I supposed to put myself in this equation? Because I've grown up for how many years of my life without a father. I don't know the love of a father. I don't know how I'm supposed to give the love of a father. So that at that point was difficult for me, and it started to make me doubt myself. Like, where am I in this placement? Where am I in this equation? Am I adequate enough to give this love, knowing that I've never had this love? And I don't want to make the same mistakes. I don't want history to repeat itself. It was a situation where I had to mentally coach myself and remind myself that, okay, I need to give my child everything that I didn't have. So I need to start from that basis. Like, if it was just simply a hug that I didn't get, give her a hug, be more interactive with her, smile at her a bit more, and you've gotten to a better place. So that was my struggle within that.
And I think it's so beautiful because you are a girl dad, and girls need their dads so much. And I'm saying that from a woman who has grown to be, you know, I'm on TV, you're not looking good at you. Sorry, but I've grown to be a woman, obviously, and I didn't have that relationship with my dad. And I just know how important and how pivotal and how crucial it is to my becoming what it would have been like if I did have him, and how much harder it's been for me to become the woman I am today. So I want to know from each of you, when, let's say, if you do have kids and you become fathers to beautiful young women, how would you love them and what would you tell them? Start with you, Sam.
How would I love them and what would I tell them? I think I would start off with the relationships I've already carved out with my sister. She's someone that when we was growing up, I take 8 years from her, so she's quite young. She's 23 now, well, turning 23 this year. That'll give you the age gap from where I'm at right now. It's a little
She was like, why did I do the maths?
Right, quick maths, it's fine, it's cool, it's cool. But even with that disparity in terms of age gap, we was so far apart in terms of connecting. It's only from about, I would say, 2016 where we actually started to build on a connection. And that was me actually actively going to her, how are you? How's things? How's uni? How's this, that, and the third? Doing that on a regular basis just to check in with her. And then I think when she started to take therapy, she unraveled some of the stuff that she needed to kind of get off her chest. And then we started to have conversations. So obviously we're in 2021 now. I would say our bond is a lot more stronger purely because of the fact that we've just grown up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're a lot more older now. So she is, again, an adult now, and I'm an adult as well. I don't have no kids. Obviously, God willing, looking forward to the day that happens. Yeah. I'm very career focused, by the way. So, God willing when that happens. But I think it was very important for me, if I do, or when that day does happen, when I do have a child who is a boy or girl, I have that relationship with my sister, because it's like, for me, that's already someone I love, someone that is younger than me, that always looks to me to guidance. And I'm very transparent with her. I don't hide nothing from her. So she's seen me how I've been with women. She's seen me how I've been towards my mum, aunties, other men. She's seen that. She's seen my friends. She's seen people around the house. She's seen that open world with me. Obviously not right now because we are in Corona pandemic. I am following the rules, just to let you know. But just to have that, her grow up and see that, okay, my brother's got a brotherhood full of men that he respects and loves, and they have siblings and stuff like that. And then, oh, my brother's got female friends. That's possible. That can happen as well. Oh, my brother's in a relationship. What's that like? And I divulge all of that to her because it's like, I don't want her to be saying that she's missed out on information that I feel is quite crucial to her, especially being at her age. And I think she's dating that as well. So. Yeah, so you have to be honest.
She's dating. So do you think, Shaun, do you think single parent families or single parent households are more loving and caring to the women in the family rather than men? Do you feel like men, especially, I'm just thinking about it now, right? Like, when you grow up in a single parent household, and literally you are the son in the household, is there like extra pressure for you to be the man?
Not at all. I think in my dynamic personally, there was a lot less pressure. I could figure out myself, but I do think in some aspects though, there was a lot of feminine energy, and sometimes you need to go for masculine energy. But you know, when you asked the question to Samuel in terms of what would you do differently if you had a daughter, I think the first thing I wouldn't do is what a lot of men do. They overcompensate for the years they spent hurting and damaging women, and they give all their love to their daughter in the hope and the belief they set such a high standard that no man could reach it except a certain kind of man. That's something I've always noticed, and it's something I've always seen quite often, but that's something I won't do. I wouldn't teach my daughter to expect from a man what she can't give to herself. So that's something really important. I'd actually teach her.
Are we in church right now? What's going on?
Listen, the one thing is...
What's going on right now, ladies? Are you listening? What?
I think I wouldn't teach her to automatically expect a man to pay for the first date either. I think a man's time is just as valuable on a first date, and times have changed in so many ways. And I saw you burning inside.
No, I'm
feel
not
it.
burning.
I feel
I'm
it.
not burning. I'm
But
just, it's interesting.
There's certain things I wouldn't do, and I'll teach her. And I think I'd like to raise her ideally in somewhat of the same trajectory as I would with a boy. I'd want to put her into sports. I'd want to teach her to hang around with older girls, or you know, just different things. I don't want to shelter her from the world because I think a lot of girls are growing up with this idea that the world is a wicked and a terrible place, and in a lot of aspects it is. But predators, they thrive off fear. If you teach your daughter to be fearless, she'll go out into the playground and fight with boys, and so many different things can happen. Whilst I can also teach her to be feminine in so many other aspects, or my wife, my partner at the time would be able to do that. So that would be my idea, my plan.
That's really key and a different perspective. But let's take it away from the personal and now let's look at the community as a whole, right? So one statistic I read out in the last episode on fatherlessness was from race equality think tank Runnymede, which said that in the UK, 59% of Black Caribbean and 44% of Black African children grow up in single-parent families, compared to 22% of the population overall. So guys, do you think these figures match up to what you've seen in the Black community, or is this just another case of small steady figures adding to sensationalist shock factor? Do you think it's the real deal, or do you think that it's blowing out of proportion?
Hey, you want to start? Because I always start, so
Anyone take it.
You know what? For me, as I was saying, I feel like it is a problem in our community. As much as I hate to try to paint us all with the same brush, whereas there are like loads of households that I've seen growing up with two parents in it. But I do feel like the generation before, I don't know what happened. Maybe the diaspora from before, they just left Nigeria. Their parents weren't there. They didn't have to follow strict rules and regulations no more. They've just come here and just created a muck of whatever morals they were given from home. Because a lot of the time, I remember speaking to my partner, and she told me that in her school, she grew up in Peckham.
Yeah.
So she went to school in Peckham. So bear in mind, there was only one Caucasian person in her class of 31.
Wow. Mad.
And she was the only, I feel like there was only 2 kids out of the whole 31, that had their parents together. The rest were all single parents. So
Mad. It's heavy.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
Back then in my day, I don't know whether we were really like woke like that, where we were asking each other our parents, but for the fact that happened in her day, in Peckham, where that was predominantly Nigerian.
Before gentrification?
Before gentrification happened, you know, these stats they're sounding kind of realistic to me, in my opinion. Unfortunately sad, but it's sounding realistic to me.
Yeah, and has that been experienced for everybody here?
I would love to know the year that study or those statistics were, because I read recently.
2011.
2011, because I read recently, I think it was in 2011, according to .gov.uk, that 18.9% of Black children grow up in single parent families. I think what's really interesting is the narrative. I think in some aspects is quite sensationalist, because there's a lot of present Black fathers. You've got groups like Dope Black Dads who are changing representation. The Guardian covered them. I know Marvin Harrison myself, he's a really nice guy. And representation's changed. I think quite often when you look at media, you always see the single mother narrative. If you look at John Boyega's film Imperial Dreams, he was actually a single father in the actual film. Not many people speak about that as well. There's a lot of single fathers out there that are taking care of their children. But I think quite often it's quite sensationalist. I think a lot of it is biased as well. In some senses, because...
But don't you think, sorry to interject, but don't you think when it comes to single parent households, I feel like the statistic for it is like 90% are headed by the single mother and only 10% by the single father. So not saying that there isn't present fathers and there isn't lone parent families led by the men, but the majority are women. So it couldn't be like an exaggeration when you look at it from that perspective, would
I think when you look at it from court as well, 97% of men apply for custody, 98% of women get it. And that was the University of Warwick study. So there's bias in the court system, there's family issues and so much more that has to be explored. So I think even with those statistics, you have to break it down. African is a wide spectrum, Caribbean's a wide spectrum. Is this North African, East African? Is it Trinidadian, Jamaican? If you break these down, you break it down and understand more of the cultural factors. So I hear quite often from a lot of my Nigerian friends that their fathers were present, but emotionally null and void.
Oh my God.
But then a lot of Caribbeans will say their fathers weren't there at all.
Yeah.
So you have to break down those cultural nuances within that. So yeah.
There's different levels to it, and there's so many different types of fatherlessnesses that we can go in, so many different nuances, and honestly, that is a conversation for another day, because if we was going to open that, I think we'll just be here for hours and hours and hours, but unfortunately we can't do that. So that is it from me, Bisi Atkins, and my amazing guests, A30 Shaun Flores and Samuel Eni. Thank you so much for joining us, and please don't forget that every single episode of Noni, past and present, is online at yangatv.com. So wherever you are in the world, you can see this show and other great content from Yanga. We would also love you to join our conversations at Noni Chat on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter at Yanga_TV. And the best comments win, you know, this thing that I've been sipping out of, a Noni mug. Join us again for more entertaining chat, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Can we give Bisi a round of applause? She smashed it. She smashed it.
Thank you, guys.
There we go. Smashed it.
Thanks for having us, Bis.
Don't say
Bis,
black
you
men
smashed
don't
it.
support black women.